It turns out that last year was our best year ever, and I say that with gratitude and then also unsurprisingly, because we've just continued to grow every single year. And I thank my team every year for that. It's the goals and the things that we put out there, and just the fact that we are all driven to get it done every single year. So it's, on one hand, it's gratitude and celebration, and then on the other hand, it kind of is like, all right, what's next? But what I was reminded of in this last week or so was that quite often in the social media world, we see only the good, and we see the, beach vacations and the growth and the impact and all of the great and amazing things. And I was reminded that, the last year has not all been good. And I think it's important to share the fact that business and life is both sides. And I don't think, there will ever be, all this amazing growth or achievement or successes without, some challenge and some issues and some things to work through. And it's because we experience the bad that we know what good tastes like, if you will. And so for the last year, for us, we lost 7 clients. And I'm grateful that we've stood by a policy of no whale clients. No single client is worth more than 5% of our revenue, which is hugely important. I've seen a lot of guys who have these whale clients, maybe a customer that is 20% of revenue or 25 or maybe more. And when that customer leaves, it really hurts a business, and you've kind of re-engineer and retool, and maybe you got to let some people go, and that's tough. And with us, we've held by a rule of no whale clients. And so even in losing those 7 customers, which we don't like to see happen, we didn't have to panic. And so good and bad in that. Over the last year, we had 6 team members leave, right? And that was, more than 20+% of our workforce. And those 6 team members carried with them 30 years of tenure with us, right? So they averaged 5 years of experience with our customers and our tools and our documentation and our processes, right? A lot of, institutional knowledge walked out the door when those team members left, and it was tough. And we were able to replace them. I think we hired 8 new in the last year, and that wasn't including the 5 that we brought in from an acquisition. And so we had more than 10 employees. More than half the staff is brand new to the organization, to our values, to our processes, to our tools, right? And so a lot of, training and education and bringing everybody up to speed was so important over the last year. And that was very tough to navigate. And as all of us in the IT industry faced, there's a huge backlog of work, right? Businesses needed to pivot and go work from home instantly. And then some of them came back, and now we're in the hybrid models, right? And cybersecurity has thrown a ton of work at all of us of, implementing all these new layers and services with regard to cybersecurity, right, over the last couple of years. And so a tremendous backlog of work that we had to navigate through. Not only was that tough in and of itself, but then you talk about a new team, a fresh team, learning said new tools and everything else. And so it was very challenging in a few different aspects. And it was probably one of the toughest years that we've faced. And yet our biggest year ever, we grew 40+%. We brought in our first acquisition, and we're now over 24 employees. And I just think that it's important to talk about the good and the bad, and show the challenge, and how did we fight through some of that stuff, and how did we work through it. Now, the quick answer is sheer determination, right? It was a choice of, well, we can, lay here and cry about it, or we can figure out how to push through, and that's what we did. As we look to 2022, our goal and our vision is to have another big growth year. We're in the midst of looking at our second acquisition and bringing even more team and clients to our business. And I think that for the industry, that's going to be a huge place for growth, right? There is still, 100 or 1,000 IT guys in everybody's marketplace. And it is getting tougher and tougher to be a small shop and be able to handle and do what is required of us in the IT and cybersecurity industry, right? I just think if you've got 5 or 10 employees, this becomes very difficult to have the resources, the team, and the capital to be able to focus on cybersecurity and deploy all that needs to happen across all of the different customers without, frankly, more team, more time, more money. And so I believe, and it's for everyone's benefit, that a little bit of consolidation, a little bit of mergers and acquisition is going to be good for everybody. And it's not, for us, it's not just about bolting on a bunch of revenue. It's about finding good partners who are going to, fully integrate into our business, right? So the team has to be right. The company values have to be right. The client mix and how they're doing their business, their layers and their level of support is super important. And I think geography. There's a lot in the IT industry that are making national IT companies and, popping up over here. And, I think it's, where they snowboard or where they, go in the winter and things like that. And I don't know that there's a reason for that. For us, we're going to just stay focused here in Chicagoland and really grow out what we have here. For us, there's 25,000+ businesses that are in our wheelhouse that could be our customers. And so there's plenty of room for opportunity. And I think by banding together and bringing in other like-minded IT providers, good is good for everybody. It gives the team a place to ascend and to focus their talents on. It gives the clients a better level of support because there's enough staff across the area to be able to get and support them quickly. And a bigger organization can do more, right? They can be more impactful for their team, for their clients, and for their community. And so I think that as we move into 2022, this opportunity for more mergers, acquisitions, call it, full integrations of multiple IT business, I think is going to lead to success. And I think there's a lot more work to be done of getting all organizations up to a solid cybersecurity standard. It is hard work. It is tough. It costs more money, not only for us, but the clients as well. But now the insurance industry is moving very fast to a model where, we're seeing non-renewals or cancellations for companies because they don't have two-factor enabled, because they're not doing cybersecurity awareness and training. And so our industry is poised for huge growth in that, with now the cyber insurance industry backing us up, right? And almost leading sales for us, right? Because when an organization, a manufacturer down the street, gets an email from their broker that says, I can't find cyber insurance for you, then they're going to come looking for guys like us to make sure that they're taken care of. And they've kind of fallen under the radar, so to speak, because they've gotten away with it for so long or haven't needed, real IT support. They've been able to call a guy and get things fixed. Now with their broker saying, hey, we can't find insurance for you, they're going to be looking to the industry, to our industry, the IT industry, to make sure that they're properly taken care of, whereas before maybe they wouldn't have. And so I think those few things, 2022 is ripe for even more growth. I know that a lot of IT companies have significantly grown in the last year. In 21, we grew 40+%. And so we are looking to continue that growth plan. And that's kind of my thoughts on what 2022 looks like for the IT industry.